key factors in admitting and managing a world-class executive class. Number one is that it be high touch. Our process in admissions mirrors what we do in the program. I actually have this philosophy. Every time I've ever applied for a job, how I'm treated in the application and interviewing process is a very good proxy for what it's going to be like to an employee there. The same is true, I believe, for an admissions process. How a candidate is treated during admissions will tell you a lot about how the person is being treated as a student. So you want it to be high touch. Secondly, we want to be able to use rolling admissions with integrated data. Sandra, can you see this slide now which says goal and key factors?
No, we don't see them. So I'm wondering if maybe what we need to do is maybe we'll run the slides from our side and give you rights to control it here, and then we can try to
Great. Why don't you do that? So while we're talking, I'll keep talking. Sandra will be putting up the slides from her end, and we'll just control them from ours. This is the advantage of a mobile world, is that we can do so much without actually being able to see each other. I have never, in fact, met Sandra face to face, but I liked their photo when I saw it a few moments ago. So moving on. So rolling admissions. So we have our applications open for 6.5 months. And our total end-to-end admissions process is closer to 8. And there's a lot of reasons for this, but the result is we do need to use rolling admissions. We're not going to wait and then at the end of 6.5 months suddenly receive all of our applications. So, and furthermore, during that rolling admissions process, we need to be able to integrate data from multiple touch points. We talk about high touch, that gives us the opportunity for multiple touch points. And finally, wherever we are, whenever we are, we need to be mobile. And what we're going to do, when we use mobile, I am primarily talking about iPad. Virtually everything we do in this admissions process when we are mobile is using iPad. In fact, lots of iPads. I have purchased, on behalf of Sloan and the EMBA team, more iPads than I care to count at one time or another as we've gone through a series of successions. So the ultimate beneficiary of this entire process is Apple. So let's look at some of the implications. So we're going to move forward to the next slide and look at high touch. What does that mean? It means multiple touch points. And there's a central role of what we call the admissions counselors. Many, but not all of our candidates, choose to speak with one of our folks on the phone, a brief call. It is not an admissions call per se, but it helps orient the person, also get some sense of the candidate. And that central admissions counselor does play out throughout the admissions process. As far as rolling admissions, you see here what that means. From week 1 to the final, you see the gradual cumulative growth of the number of completed applications. I leave it to you and your analytical capabilities to deduce how many deadlines we have. People are people, they wait till deadlines. But something like 1/3 of our applications actually are weeks apart from either of our applications. So we have constant growth, but it's inconsistent. You can't say, we're going to read 10 applications a week. There are times when it's 10 applications for 3 weeks, and then, we had our application deadline on May 29th. I feel like we've been doing nothing but reading for the last 3 weeks. So, very inconsistent, but we know that it's constant. Each touch point, and we'll talk about those touch points in some detail, produces data. I love data. I live for data. This is MIT. I mean, what do you expect, right? I drank the Kool-Aid a long time ago. Some decisions, we need all the data. Others, and we're going to show you this, we actually want certain decisions to be made, certain actions taken, absent other data because we don't want to bias the results. And finally, we talked about the other key factor being mobile. Again, all of our staff have multiple roles. It's not enough just to have calibration meetings when people are running around at different speeds with iPads in different places. And by the way, we're tired of killing trees. When we first, as a school, considered moving to a mobile application for reading and reviewing applications, we realized how many hundreds, in fact thousands of pages were being printed. If you run admissions now and you are surrounded in your office by 5 and 10 and 20 page packets, and you're thinking about let's be mobile, so let's take them on planes. You know whereof I speak. We have now got this down to the point that we never print a page at all. And the forests love us for it. Let's look at the process. I talked about the factors. Now let's look at the process of admissions. This is from the candidate's point of view. Most candidates fill out a web form on our website. Many, not all, have this phone interview. And I think interview is maybe a little bit of a misnomer here. Again, this is informational. It is prior to application. It does not determine someone's candidacy, but it does give us and the candidate some data. Many candidates choose to go on to events like information sessions on the road or on campus. And then there's the application itself. And then there's a pause. Many, but by no means all, candidates go forward and actually have on-campus interviews. We do 2 back-to-back. And then finally, there's the decision to attend. Meanwhile, in the background, what are we doing? As we get the web forms, we triage. There's a certain number of people that we suggest that this is not really the program they're looking for. The most common example of this is someone who appears to be looking for an entirely online program. The MIT Executive MBA is a campus-based program. People are not on campus 100% of the time, but all the classes happen on campus. So if somebody wants to do this online from Bahrain, and we've had that request, we simply need to dissuade them and send them elsewhere. Similarly, when someone has a phone interview, if they choose to do so, there's occasionally, it turns out that somebody really is looking for a different program. MIT Sloan is proud to have a portfolio of master's programs, and in some cases, we've sent people on to another master's program where they've been very happy. It's really Miracle on 34th Street. If we don't have it at Macy's, we're going to send them to Gimbel's. After we get the application, we read it, and then we decide, as a first decision point, are we going to interview the person on campus, or is this person someone whom we should reject now? The person goes forward for on-campus interviews. We do those one right after the other, and then there's a second decision point, accept, reject, or waitlist. These are the 2 simultaneous processes of admissions, but this total student life cycle actually goes beyond this. Admissions is only one part, in some ways the prelude to what happens for a student. We also want to think about the student throughout the entire cycle, going on to being enrolled and going on to be an alumnus. So enrolled and alum are also part of the student life cycle. If you've got a database that you've built to decide whether to admit the person, why would you not want to keep this exactly the same database going forward right through the person concluding classes? That's the process. What does that process mean? From a person's point of view of solutions, that process means that we have 2 solutions that we have adopted for this program. Target X, which we'll be demonstrating shortly, which covers the admissions process from essentially the moment of triage right through a decision to attend. And then Salesforce One, which is our process which we use when we are trying to, when we're considering the entire cycle of the students, from very first contact right through to alumni status. So, how do these solutions help us address what I refer to as those 3 key factors? The first, again, being high touch. Again, we're going to go on to rolling admissions and then to mobile. So, high touch. We have a very long sales cycle for some candidates. Remember, these people are in the middle of their career. It's not like college. College, a lot of people decide to go to college at about 18 because that's when they graduate from high school. I was 17 because I'm weird. Some people are 19 or 20. But it's relatively rare to have a 30-year spread in age between matriculants, which we do. That means that people decide to apply when it is actually the right time for them, which is good because they also decide what's the right program for them. But it means that someone can fill out a form in 2011 but not talk to anybody for 3 more years. We don't want to have a conversation that's completely uninformed by all that information from before. We want to have robust, rapidly reported data. We can't be dependent on pulling things out of files or asking somebody if they remember somebody, or we're asking the candidate to refresh our memory, which means we have no idea who you are. So that's the high-touch aspect. This is why one wants a robust CRM. Being on the rolling admission side, these touch points produce multiple information flows and 5 roles. I'm using the term a little loosely. It means something quite technical when we're talking about Target X. But let's look at that process we saw a minute ago from the point of view of the team. These stages here actually key into 5 main roles. The qualifying is done by the admissions counselor, and then we have the reader, and then we have the post-read decision making, which is by me and my head of admissions, and then we have the interviewing process, and then we have the second decision, which is actually made by a large group of people simultaneously. Those 5 are going to play out throughout the rest of this presentation. You're going to see the roles and the demonstration for those. Interestingly, I talked about some of these decisions being made blind. Point 3 is based on 1 and 2 together. But point 2 is deliberately not made with any of the information from number 1. Why? Because I want people reading the application not to be biased by a prior call with an admissions counselor. At the moment of reading, I want us to read the application. When it comes time for a decision whether to interview the person, that I want to do with as much data as possible. The application, I'm trying to keep in a box. I'm trying to literally do that in a vacuum. That works very well because it means that you don't sort of say, well, I already know how this person is going to turn out. You're actually reading the application. This is important because we really take the data seriously because, frankly, the candidates, good ones anyway, took their application very seriously. That was high-touch enrolling admissions. And you'll remember that the third of our key factors was mobile. Our decisions have to be efficient and effective. We can work anywhere. You know, as I said, we were in the final sort of death throes of reading applications, that phase 2, and I was in phase 3 this morning. At 5:30 in the morning, I woke up because I don't sleep very well. And I decided now is the time to start making some of those stage 3 decisions, whether to interview or to reject. That's not the big decision. The big decision, which comes much later after the person interviews, is, takes a long time. But the decision based on data so far, should we push this person forward for interview? That used to be a messy process. A spreadsheet over here, pulling up something on a website over there, maybe making some calls. Now it's all sitting on a single iPad, on a single set of screens, which Angel will be demonstrating for us later. So that's that first decision point, just interview versus reject. That's stage 3. Stage 5, the final decision process, an entire